Okay guys, so now that we have created our thesis statement, we now need to delve a little bit deeper and start looking at how we're actually going to argue the validity of our thesis statement. Now, I always like to work in threes, and I like to work in the argument tree, branching off with your different arguments and then subsequent evidence that you would incorporate into your essay. It is so important to consistently have your thesis statement wherever you are working on your arguments. Having that at the very fore of your thinking will ensure that you are responding to that thesis with all the evidence that you are providing. So, essentially, your arguments are the overarching ideas that help you prove your thesis. Now, that actually includes evidence, usually through the format of quotes from the text, and this is where we now start to more directly reference the thesis, the stimulus in relation to the thesis. So, it's really important that you don't get bogged down with having to directly reference the stimulus in your arguments. Don't make your arguments the stimulus. However, you want to incorporate it into your analysis. And that's what I've sort of done here under each of the arguments that I have created. The little star points are essentially where I would be going with the analysis of this particular argument. One thing that's really important to note, guys, is that these little sentences here, or these little statements, are not quotes from the text, nor are they quotes from the stimulus. Sometimes you tend to get a bit confused as to how you actually use quotes. Quotes should only be coming in the explanation, in the example sentence or your analysis. And often you'll find that you'll be able to do both. That provides the depth for the arguments you're making. But don't have quotes as your specific overarching arguments. What this actually does in having your sort of umbrella arguments is it allows you to incorporate lots of different pieces of evidence. I'm going to be going over that in a little while. But to start off with, as I said, I like to work in threes. I would probably be comfortable in just arguing the middle argument and one other. Because I think that there is a huge amount of material that you could incorporate into this argument. Amir's inaction in response to Hassan's rape. You could even combine these ideas in argument one, which is looking at the manner in which Amir engages with his father, because I'm actually basing this argument off Amir's reactions to Baba whenever he asks Amir to ask Hassan along to something, or when Hassan is also granted the same opportunity, such as getting a new kite, for example. It sort of depends on how much you feel you could actually talk about. I've crafted these as three separate arguments to show where you could possibly go with this particular question. So, the first one that I'd be arguing is, as I said, the manner in which Amir engages with his father. And my analysis and examination in the text as to that particular argument is the consistent minor betrayal of Hassan over time, which compels Amir to often question himself. And as a result of that, that's a betrayal of his own moral obligations, that he actually knows he's being, a bit shady, but he does it anyway. This here is where you are bringing in the stimulus, all right? Because I'm actually bringing in this concept of morals and moral obligation. The second argument that I would be detailing is probably my dominant argument. I like to put the strongest argument probably in the middle because it creates that focus on it. The middle or the last argument I would probably put the strongest argument as. And that second argument is Amir's inaction in response to Hassan's rape. And that's obviously ultimately a betrayal of his own moral obligations. And that is, what equates to the guilt. In fact, I might actually add that there. Which we see, come up again and again over time as the novel progresses. Now, my final one, just to show my understanding of the different characters and the way that this particular idea of self-preservation and conflict is addressed in the text, actually focuses on Baba and his relationship with Ali and his ultimate betrayal with his adultery and the fact that he actually fathered Hassan. So I've actually incorporated this concept of the emotional and the analytical reasoning, as well as moral obligation, that idea of sense of responsibility, into this, how I would analyze this particular argument. So in essence, the way that he handles it by keeping, Hassan and Ali on as servants, obviously, but the way that he treats Hassan is very kindly. He does try to make up for the fact that he, is in some part responsible for Hassan because he literally fathered him. But there's also a bit of rational thinking in the way that he's not actually treated truly as family, because obviously that would be very dishonorable, to know that there has been this adultery in his history. So the rational thinking, which is the practical way of avoiding dishonor in not actually admitting to anyone, that he's fathered Hassan, yet he still tries to respond to Hassan in a morally just way, by the way that he treats him. He doesn't just treat him as a servant. He asks Amir to bring him along to things, and he makes sure that Hassan has somewhat quality of life with the fixing of his cleft lip, and the way that he responds when Amir even suggests that Hassan and Ali leave. So those would be my overarching arguments, and obviously we now need to be going again one step further in specificity and finding our quotes, our particular evidence from the text that we would then expand on these arguments with.